Today is part 2 of a 3-part series on DriveWorks. The topic for today is CPQ, or configure price quote. CPQ is an effective way to increase sales and meet customer requirements faster. So if you have had any internal dialogue with your teams around this topic, we believe you will love what you see today.
So let's get started. Quick review of what we're going to go over today. As Gray mentioned, this is part 2 of a 3-part series. In general, we're going to explain what is DriveWorks, what's it all about, and how does DriveWorks relate to CPQ. What is CPQ? We'll finally go online to look at some demos and look at a demo on my machine as well, just to give you a full picture of what a day in the life of CPQ is all about. And of course, we'll leave some time for a Q&A at the end. And if we don't get to your question, we can certainly follow up with you after the webinar is over. It's worth noting the webinar is being recorded. You will get a follow-up link in the coming days that you can rewatch it or forward it on as you see fit. Okay, so we have a 3-part series, and we also have a notion at TPM. We've come up with the term the 3 pillars of DriveWorks. Okay, and this is how we look at the totality of what DriveWorks has to offer. We kind of package or conceptually collect different types of functionality into these 3 pillars. And what are these pillars? Okay, the first one is all things design automation for SolidWorks. We did recently do a webinar dedicated to just this. It's available online. Great if you could paste the link and to go to webinar. Folks, you'll have the ability to watch that and dig more into that. We will do a very quick review of what design automation means, because it's not required, but it can be quite relevant in terms of putting CPQ to work in your business. Okay. Second pillar is what we're here to talk about today, all things CPQ. And then finally, the third is what we dub everything else. And that's a catch-all term that is the best that we've come up with to date, but it really speaks to all things data, workflow, processes, really using DriveWorks to be the home for how you begin to run more and more of the business through a proper system where everything's integrated, everything's touching, all the data is moving around, just so, in effect, putting the right data in the right hands at the right time. So we'll dive into that more specifically in an upcoming webinar, part 3, so stay tuned for that. Okay, so quick recap of what was missed. If you didn't make it to the part 1 about design automation. 1 slide review here. The first thing that we studied is this notion of configurability, and you've given us some insights already, okay, about which type of companies or what types of products are maybe candidates for automating design and the whole design practice in the business. And we've established this spectrum for configurability. Where on the far left you have widgets. Let's say you injection mold pen caps and cups by the thousands or the millions. You put them on a shelf and you ship them. Not much to configure there. And then there's the idea on the other side of the spectrum of companies that operate on a truly one-off basis. Today, they're designing a motorcycle. The next day, they're selling a swimming pool. Right? There's just like literally no connection between design and practices and methods and logic and just general insights. There's no connections to be made from one day to another. The 2 extremes of the spectrum, then we find that everything else in between is there's a good conversation to be had to see if DriveWorks can contribute. Okay, so even some products that would be thought of as like a catalog selection. You're a pump maker, you've got 10,000 SKUs. Every SKU is slightly different in how it represents a unique iteration of that pump product line. Okay, maybe all these products are pre-established, but still there's this notion of someone's got to configure their way to selecting the right SKU. Custom, we throw custom in here because a lot of times manufacturers think that they're custom, but if you start asking some questions such as, whenever you design a new version of your product, do you start from scratch? Do you just make it up as you go? Or at the end of the day, are there rules, methods? Are you building off of history of what you've done before, so on and so forth, that you actually rely on to execute the design process? Most folks say, yes, actually, that's true. We don't just randomly design our product every day. So we do put that into the DriveWorks spectrum. Most companies tend to be somewhere in the middle, lightly configurable, moderately, or even highly configurable. Okay. So kind of outlining the complexities that the notion of configurability presents to a business as a whole. How does that impact the design process and your day-to-day practices in SolidWorks? The short story there is that if you can do something with a mouse by hand in SolidWorks as an engineer or designer or a drafter, chances are pretty good that those exact steps can be automated, so long as there's some logic to work from, and so long as you can put in plain English how a designer would go through the design process. That logic can be captured, put it into DriveWorks. We can activate those individual steps within SolidWorks, thereby automating the design process. Then we wrapped up with an actual peek under the hood. While this all sounds fine and grand, how does it actually work? Let me see what the software looks like. How do you set it up? We did take a short tour of DriveWorks behind the scenes to just give a short sense of what it's all about. Okay, so if any of that is of interest to you, please check that link, watch that video, and I think you'll have a lot of nice insights there. Okay, so taking a step back from just design automation or just CPQ, I want to just describe generally what DriveWorks is all about. So on the right here, we have a descriptor of the main kind of functional areas that DriveWorks offers. Okay, the ability to create rules. That means capturing logic in a written form that's safely stored in a system. Okay, rules can be as simple or as complex as they need to be. They can be engineering equations. They can solicit a third-party website to do some processing and return a result. The rules can be as sophisticated as they need to be to match your circumstance. All things automating CAD, right? Like I said, if you can do something with a mouse in SolidWorks, we can automate that exact step. DriveWorks is all about integrations. SolidWorks is the preeminent native integration for DriveWorks, but DriveWorks has all the tools in place to integrate with any other kind of business system. Furthermore, DriveWorks has its own 3D technology. That means the ability to see a product, a representation of the product in 3D in a way that's dynamic in the moment that someone is specifying the product. And we'll see examples of that. UI builder, user interface. For this whole conversation to have a home, right? For CPQ to be the home of something, that means there's somewhere to go, something to interface with, buttons to click, values to enter into fields. That's collectively just a form. Kind of the tech term for that would be UI, user interface. DriveWorks has the ability to build the exact UI that is right for your business's circumstances. All of this was built into the sensible workflow. How does a business operate itself? How do you go from interest in a product to delivering a quote, to turning that into an order, to sending it to manufacturing, so on and so forth, right? To have a home, you need workflow. You need to be able to carry something through from start to finish. Finally, reporting is important. How are things going? Do you need dashboards? Do you need insights? Do you need to check for errors? How's the health of the system? Any sort of reporting is available through DriveWorks as well. Finally, processing of all things documents. well beyond just SOLIDWORKS files, PDFs, any sort of Office documents, text files, HTML, sending a JSON packet to a third-party system, whatever it is, if it's a file that needs to be ingested or created and moved on in this home that we call CPQ, DriveWorks has that covered as well. Okay, so we look at all that functionality, we throw some characteristics at it, and we add it all up. We're talking about the preeminent solution for all things SOLIDWORKS automation. Everything in DriveWorks is truly customizable. Every nook and cranny of the software can be altered to your exact needs, all within a no-code setting. Okay, this is an emerging trend in all things software, where we're kind of coming into this era of the citizen developer. Okay, this means that work that was traditionally done by a programmer in some obscure code that no one else understands, but achieves some bespoke functionality, does something custom that's really important in your business, that can now be rendered in a no-code setting that is accessible to the likes of engineers, designers, really anyone with, well, just some amount of technical aptitude. Okay, finally, all of this is web ready. It doesn't have to be put onto a website, but it can quite easily, thus rendering the entirety of your DriveWorks implementation, CPQ probably being one component of that, accessible from anywhere in the world on any device through the internet. Add all that up, pretty nifty all-in-one solution, just perfect for manufacturers of configurable product. Okay, a little bit about, oh, I have a little mistitle here. So I want to start to dig into what is CPQ, zeroing back into the CPQ thread. Okay, for those that don't know, CPQ is among the many business system acronyms out there. The three-letter term to describe software is the way to go. So CPQ is right there in the mix. It stands for configure, price, quote. So following that phrase, a CPQ system ought to enable just conceptually the configuration of a product. And ideally, it can handle that configuration no matter how complex the product is. Whether it requires 10 rules to successfully render the correct result or thousands of rules, you ought to be able to configure the product. Meanwhile, as you're configuring, you ought to see how your choices are impacting price. The pricing ought to be calculated real time, dynamically, in direct response to that user's engagement with the system. And then what do you do with that information? How do you process it and manage it? The quote is the traditional document of choice to do that. But going beyond just simply creating a quote, how do you provision centralized access to the quote? How do you manage a revision process? And furthermore, how do you take that to a downstream step, such as converting it to an order and getting that same information into manufacturing's hands? So a good CPQ system ought to address the following. So we take a step back and we look at, in principle, what a CPQ system can do for a manufacturer of configurable products. We're talking about automating any form of process, thereby speeding up all things quoting. And this is really important for manufacturers because if you're like most we talk to, you win some small proportion of the jobs you quote. Might be 5%, 15%. If you're lucky, you're at 30%, which means that the vast majority of the energy put into servicing quotes is pure waste, right? So if you sit there and think about it, and you think about the value of reducing the impact of servicing the majority of quotes that you will never see an order for, automation starts to sound pretty good. So that's what CPQ ought to enable at its core, is reducing the amount of effort it takes to service quotes. Okay. We consider the UI, we consider a robust workflow, and we consider how We can capture a complicated design process. If we do that just right, we ought to be able to enable intelligent and guided selling process. Not just talking about upselling, but how do we help the user make sure that they know what they're ordering, and thereby prevent opportunities for errors downstream. Okay, and we can put this capability in anyone's hands. The typical user, maybe they don't need to be an expert in your product. Okay, well, with the right collection of tools in place, done well, anyone, frankly, ought to be able to configure your product successfully. The system is underpinned by rules and logic, right? So long as the rules and logic are correct, then that's the key to reducing errors and costly mistakes, whether it's a coding mistake or a specification mistake. There's nothing like making the product and then being about to ship it and then realize that there's something wrong with the product. So, why not take the years of experience and know-how and insights that your company has somewhere, somehow, some way, pack that into a system and then act against it reliably. Furthermore, what we'll see with CPQ is the ease of setup and how CPQ enables the maintenance of the system to be spread out amongst multiple actors in your business. It doesn't have to be just an engineering tool. It can be a marketing tool. It can be a clerical tool, so on and so forth. So many ways to look at how the system can grow and evolve with your business over time. Okay, if you do a search for CPQ in Google, you will come up with pages and pages, hundreds of results. CPQ is not a novel thing. DriveWorks did not create the concept of CPQ. A lot of other companies out there have attempted to tackle the challenge of configuring, pricing, and quoting product. We'll say the vast majority of them will fall short for manufacturers of configurable, especially highly configurable product. Okay, so in that light, DriveWorks has a lot to offer that is truly unique and stands out from the rest. A lot of that functionality is derived from the fact that everything in DriveWorks is customizable. You're not purchasing a template into which you have to contort your business to make that template work. Out of the box, it's a clean slate, and this system will be built around your exact needs, your exact circumstances. Furthermore, CPQ is natively integrated or integratable with other aspects of DriveWorks that you might find appealing, such as CAD automation, or integrating with your ERP system or your CRM system, whatever it may be. So it will not be a system that sits alone off to the side that gets used here and there as just another random piece of your business that's just floating out there in the ether. Okay, finally, as I mentioned before, maintenance is a thing. CPQ is a fully supported aspect of the DriveWorks product. That means tech support, service support, and just general help as needed to enable your system to evolve over time is readily available. All right, well, that's enough of the presentation part. Let's get to some actual demos, and let's put our eyes on what CPQ is all about. Now, just want to make sure you have access to and you're aware of the resources that we are about to review. They are both public-facing websites. You're more than welcome to go back and review them on your own. In fact, I'd highly encourage you to do so. So, Gray, if you could pop into the webinar, the links for a site called DriveWorks Live, and a link to another page called Vista. Vista is a door and window manufacturer. That's kind of like a real live implementation of DriveWorks and DriveWorks CPQ in one. Okay, so I want to go through the DriveWorks Live site first, because I think it's just important that you're aware that this web page exists and has a lot of really good content. Okay, so here it is in all its glory. This site in particular is you'll see on the first like half of the page is all about presenting the notion of what I would refer to as a standalone configurator. Okay, I'll circle back to what that means in a second, and we'll explore a configurator just so you know what that means. And then below is all things CPQ. There's a nice video that introduces CPQ and really gets into the idea of how multiple actors in the supply chain can get involved with the system, not just multiple actors within your business. So as a manufacturer, do you want to have your distributors involved? Do you want to have your end user customers in the mix? Maybe even your suppliers ought to have a role and participate in one overarching platform. We do have another link to the Vista company. We will circle back to that in a second. And then furthermore, there is an opportunity to explore the various aspects of DriveWorks technology that I alluded to before. What is this that you tell me about writing rules? How is a workflow captured in DriveWorks? How's my business going to run itself through a workflow in a piece of software? What about integrating with other systems? You told me about 3D representation of products in a browser. Wait, is that SOLIDWORKS or is that something else? A lot more information on that readily available and nice and easy to consume, even if you don't know much about DriveWorks. So, okay, well, let us get into studying an actual product configurator. I'm going to pick the cupboard project here. Oh, I want to point out that every one of these demos, they are demos, so you have to take these with a little bit of a grain of salt. They have been, I'll say, perhaps simplified and generalized, and they've been stripped of the actual manufacturer's branding and name and methods and such. But these are real DriveWorks customers who have agreed to basically offer a version of their implementation to DriveWorks to showcase as demos. But DriveWorks has then taken those, dumbed them down a bit, simplified them, and made them easy to consume for the general public. Okay. So when we explore this cupboard demo, there is somewhere in history a cupboard cabinet manufacturing company using DriveWorks in this fashion, and we are just experiencing a market-ready version of that configuration. Okay, so what's happening right now is we are tapping into DriveWorks' own server. They host their own DriveWorks implementation on their property, on their own servers, and they happen to be a UK company, so we're going across the pond to experience their configurator live right here, right now, on any device as you go. So you could easily imagine, well, oh, if I were a cabinet manufacturer and you were a cabinet manufacturer and I, as the presenter, am just someone interested in your product, you could connect the dots and imagine how this tool would be in your hands. So I just want to explain the anatomy of a run-of-the-mill product configurator, because this is important to understand when we put it in the context of CPQ. What we can see here is DriveWorks' 3D technology in place. This is not SOLIDWORKS. This is their own rendering technology that is light and fast and attractive in a browser, right? So we see here on the left that we can configure this product with easy to use buttons, all sorts of methods for introducing my exact needs as the consumer of the cabinet, and we are getting a real-time representation of that product as we go. Not only is the graphical representation of the product changing, but you'll notice that the price is changing in real time. We can handle different currencies if we care to. We're even giving a bit of a summary account of how that price is building up, right? We have the base cabinet price. We have maybe some upcharge for a size, a custom size, and there's going to be some hardware, if I so choose, that will add to the cost as well. So as the user, as I say, oh, I want 840, but I'm not happy with the price. All right, fine. Let's drag that back down and get my price back to somewhere where I'm happy with it. So we're configuring, we're pricing. When we get to the end of this workflow, we'll see the quote itself, totally fulfilling the CPQ process. Configuration can happen in any number of ways: size, color, accessories, the actual composition of the product, right? Do we need to swap out one option for another? We want to accessorize it. Is this an opportunity to upsell, to add interesting differences? Don't know. And then finally, we get to the end of this process. And speaking of integrations and data, and what can you do with that data? If those underlying rules and logic that powers this system is available, why not take advantage of it? Now, most consumers don't need to see the BOM, but hey, BOM information is available right now. Maybe the purchasing agent in your company might want to run an analysis saying, hey, we've got 1,000 quotes this quarter featuring the following materials. Maybe that'll impact, our long-term purchasing agenda with our suppliers. Cut list information might be pretty handy for the manufacturing division in your business. Of course, the actual quote itself is pretty handy. And this is offered as an XML, but once I fulfill this process, we will see I'll get a PDF of that in an email attachment as well. So all sorts of information is at our fingertips. We always say strive to put the right information in the right hands at the right time. It's up to you and your business what exactly that means. We're just seeing examples of doing so right here through a browser in real time. All right, let's fulfill this request. And because it's a demo, they want to know who I am. Okay. Just like that, my request has been put out there to this manufacturer. Okay, so from the user standpoint, we're done. Wipe our hands of it, move on in life. We expect to get an email soon, but as the manufacturer, you might want to know what's going on behind the scenes. This is a dashboard of sorts showing what exactly is happening on those DriveWorks servers right now. How many models need to be created in SolidWorks? How many drawings? How many ancillary documents like quotes or cover letters or the like? In total, how much content is there? DriveWorks is digesting all the rules and logic that have been built into the product configurator, processing that real time, generating content real time in direct response to my request. So they're showing images of the CAD content that's being created, right? So this part right here, this SolidWorks part file just generated. So is this one. This drawing just generated based on the dimensions that I spec'd in my request, so on and so forth. So just in the couple seconds that I'm here explaining what's going on right now, DriveWorks is already, 88% done with all of that content. There's just a clear representation of the speeds to be gained by automation, period. Again, a lot of this content is specific to CAD automation. I'm going to refer back to that part 1 of our series, where we learn a lot more about how that works. But I just want to present this so that we can get to the real topic, which is CPQ. And the difference between what we are seeing here as a quote-unquote standalone configurator and a proper full CPQ system is that this configurator, it's just sort of there, right? It might be, so in your company, joelscabinets.com, yeah, maybe there's a place where I can go and log into a portal and I get straight to that cabinet configurator. Great, well, that's a nice step, but it's nothing more than just a configurator. It's not connected to anything else yet. It doesn't have a fuller and better home. It isn't ingratiated into the rest of my business process. And that's what CPQ is all about. It's about giving your configuration process a full and complete home. Which brings us to our second website that we're going to look at, which is the Vista Window and Door Manufacturing Company. Now, Vista is a fictitious company that DriveWorks created. They built a website for it just to say, hey, this probably ought to look fairly familiar to you. As a manufacturer, I'm sure you've got a website that showcases your products, has great imagery, and it's just a website that you are otherwise familiar with, except directly embedded in it is perhaps some form of that product configuration process that we will in a few moments see is intrinsically linked to the rest of how your business operates. Okay, so first let's just talk about what we are looking at here. Again, it's a run-of-the-mill website that has within it literally embedded DriveWorks functionality. Okay, so outside of this blue rectangle, website. Inside the blue rectangle, DriveWorks. Seamlessly integrated. The user can't tell. They just think they're on a normal website. But here they are, able to configure product, just like we saw in a standalone product configurator. Right? We've got pleasant UI, we've got 3D previews, we've got nice graphics, we've got calculating pricing real time, and we've got a dynamically responsive form that really does a great job of guiding the user through what exactly are we trying to configure here. If I don't know how it works, hey, quick handy menu. I don't know what a muntin is. I'm not even sure if that's how you pronounce it. Oh, it's the strips that go here in the window. Thank you for that helpful description. That was also clear because the 3D preview was obvious about that. So actually that's a little busy for my taste, so let's bring that down to 2x2. Great. I like the little color in my life, my home, so I'm gonna go with red. That looks pretty sharp. And let's see. And that's, hey, why not just a quick summary of the product as described. I'll take 3 of those, please. I can see the product price, I can see the total price. Looks good to me. Let's move on here. So what we are seeing here is a version of CPQ that's been deployed to the public. Maybe Joel is just a tire kicker. I'm a homeowner, I'm looking for new windows. I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea how much they cost. I guess I could call a distributor or go to my local door window shop, use up their time, or maybe I can talk to a manufacturer, but somebody in the supply chain is gonna have to deal with me, right? And they're just gonna service this quote, it's gonna take time, and all to find out that, whoa, 4,600 bucks, I can't do that for 3 windows. Thanks, but no thanks. There goes some amount of contribution to the vast majority of quotes that you service that will never go anywhere, right? For the tire kicker type purposes. So maybe that's a thing for your business, maybe not, but we're just simply showing that we can make this configuration process be public facing if you so chose. Okay, got in the basket here. Actually, I just realized I am not in the right link. I'm sorry, guys. I need to use a different version of the site that is specific for this demo here. I'm just going to quickly configure a product here, take one step back, and then we can take more steps forward. Close that out. Okay, just pick a different color here. There we go. Okay, so that's the correct one here. Okay, so while that's thinking, we're going to take the next step. So whether or not you care to have public access to your standalone product configurators embedded into your site, something like this, from here on out, the CPQ system is something that ought to be accessible through a portal, much like this, okay? Again, normal website with login credentials. I am set up as an administrator with this company, so I will get to see everything. I have access to all once I get into the sort of the private company, sort of internal aspect of CPQ within the manufacturing firm, okay? But of course, the manufacturer could offer credentials for their distributors or for their suppliers, right? And it's totally a thing within DriveWorks to set up certain specific credentials for any given user, thereby controlling what exactly they see, they have access to, so on and so forth. But at this moment in Vista, we are getting kind of a picture of what someone with all access might look like. Okay, what I will mention right now is part of the big value proposition for DriveWorks CPQ is that much of it, I'd say 70% of CPQ is available right out of the box. DriveWorks has taken upon themselves, they studied the marketplace, they understand manufacturers of configurable product, and they concluded that, you know what, 99% of these companies need the following functionality. Let's go ahead and build that out so that when they buy the software, they don't have to start from scratch to have access to things such as accounts or contacts, or have a dashboard, or be able to update the password. Like that ought to be stuff that's just available on day one. Not to say that what we see here could not be highly customized. If this is our like CPQ homepage dashboard, we could have KPIs, we could have charts, we could have prompts or access to our company intranet. Again, think about having a proper full home for your business. What would that contain? This is the space in which sort of your entry points to all that content. Okay, so much of what we're seeing here is available right out of the box, including the fact that there are tiles. The tiles serve certain types of functionality. That we go into a place called accounts, and sure enough, we have access to our accounts. In this particular demo, they don't show that we can edit and add and delete, but this would be the workspace where, hey, anyone with access and the proper credentials could come in and say, oh, yeah, we do have this customer of a certain name. We need to change their phone number or add a new email. Just general maintenance of your data. Let's make sure that your data is kept up to date. Now, you might say, hold on, customer data, we already have that in another system. We've got all that packed away in the ERP or a CRM system. That's fine. We don't need to have the data exist in DriveWorks as well. We can link DriveWorks to other data sources. So maybe this data is coming from your CRM system, like a Salesforce or a HubSpot or your QuickBooks, or who knows, your other system of record that you would prefer to have be the authoritative source of that kind of a truth. Fine, let's connect DriveWorks to it and either be able to look at it or even edit it from within the DriveWorks interface. Those are very typical uses of CPQ. Same thing for contacts. You have contacts, specific individuals that are related to a company, or maybe not, they're just floating out there as unique folks that your business is aware of with all the requisite and typical information accordingly. Finally, you can add links to other websites, right? Just handy references. Why not include those? If again, this is your system of record to log in and carry out all sorts of related activity, put everything else at your fingertips. Put the right data in the right hands at the right time is what we will keep saying. All right, let's get into the idea of giving a standalone product configurator a home, a full home within the business. Okay, so the tire kickers that I was referring to that access our quoting system, they just wanted a price, we don't know who they are. Well, we have record of that. And that has been in Vista, they just termed that an online quote request, okay? So we have a place where we can go to see all outstanding quote requests. Okay, 2 in the system at the moment that are unprocessed, let's say. Oh, by the way, I bet that sales manager or maybe the sales rep for the territory, based on the request as it was made, got an email or some sort of notification, or when they log into CPQ, they see the requests that are just for them. So maybe I'm a sales rep for the Carolinas. These are the quote requests that came through in that territory. That's all I need to see. Keep it nice and simple for me, please. All right, well, who is this person? What do they want? What can I glean from their interests? We collected some amount of information from the website in a public-facing fashion. We can go ahead and edit that. We can add shipping information. We can do all sorts. We have immediate access to all the typical content associated with the who, the where, and the what surrounding a quote. But right there, one click away, we have access to the actual quote. Okay, in the actual interface, in the setting that customer experienced when they processed this themselves. Okay, so we can come right into that quote. We can alter it if we see fit. Let's say I reached out to that individual, I talked to them about the project. They decide, and in doing so, we realize, oh, they actually need 10, quantity of 10. And as a result, they qualify for a 10% discount. And we can see the impact of that right away here in the system. We realize that they need to change the sizes of scotch, and they want to switch to, I don't know, a different color. Okay, we can update all that right here on the fly in the same inherent system that the customer would use or the distributor might use. Whoever you care to bring into the fray, they all get the same centralized shared access, so long that that is what you want to do. Okay, again, everything that I just said is customizable to your own exact needs. You have the ability to introduce comments, okay, called customer, added quantity, offered discount. Right? Why not put that in the same record associated with everything else about that moment? Anyone else who has access to information can see, you know, kind of the paper trail. Well, it's not paper, it's digital. The digital trail of what is transpiring. Okay. Documents. We don't have any yet, but we could upload some. Let's say we got a cut sheet from that customer, or they said that they wanted to do a specific piece of hardware and they sent us some information on that. Okay, we can upload that, and why don't we just join that with the rest of that information in a centralized way. After all that, we're saying, okay, great, this tire kicker, actually, they want a proper quote. They want to move to the next step. So we have very easy to use interface here, and we have kind of a portrayal of Vista's overall business workflow here in the bottom. Now on the left, we start with a web request, and if we're lucky, that it turns into an order, and then one day we ship it, so on and so forth. We also have the ability to loop through a couple of things here. We can reject the quote. We can requote, and we will see all those steps here shortly. But anyways, let's move this from a web request to a quote. Okay, and if we back out a bit, the way that Vista has set up their CPQ, they want to see the quotes segregated separately through a different access point. So we'll navigate to this quotes area where that web request has been converted in the system to a quote. Okay, so here it is, all the same information, it's just being recognized in a different state. And because it is now a formal quote, DriveWorks automatically created a quote document that's reflective of the order. You know, this is their boilerplate quote template, you know, some nice descriptive information, information on pricing, so on and so forth. Your quotes might look very different. They might have a whole lot more data. They might have CAD documents, who knows? But collectively, all the content that you deem appropriate for that moment of quoting is hereby available automatically in a centralized online format where whoever you care to have access to it can log in and see the same stuff. All right. Now, we could, at this point, after more deliberation, we could requote it, right? That's going to put it back into the prior step. We can make some changes to the product, give it a new price, and offer another reversion of that quote. I didn't make any changes here. but just it hasn't generated the quote. Yep, here it is. Yep, version 2 of same quote. So now we have history all in one handy place, centralized for everyone to access the same way. How many times have you experienced something going wrong because of an email attachment, right? You sent 5 versions of the quote, the customer referred to the 3rd version, you were working on the 6th version, and just something went wrong. And that was never recognized until the product showed up on the doorstep, and it's just wrong. And the root cause is because it's just simply mishandling of data in between parties or even internally within your own company. By and large, a lot of that can be avoided if you're not relying on documents in a physical sense, and you're not relying on sending and receiving and lobbying these documents back and forth. That's why CPQ and DriveWorks is highly focused on the centralization and the shared access of this content. Imagine how many mistakes you can avoid in the supply chain by simply doing that. Okay, moving on. So we're happy with the quote. We're now going to push it into an order. We're not showing it here, but let's say the sales manager was notified, the engineering manager was notified. It's now a thing. A lot more people in the company now need to know about this. So whoever has access to orders, they can come and witness, come participate in the same exact information in the same way that everyone else in the system has enjoyed so far. I don't know, maybe it makes sense for your company to have such a thing as an order confirmation, or maybe you don't produce CAD content until you get the order, and it's then that you need that SolidWorks automation to kick in. And so instead of just a PDF, we would have, I don't know, e-drawings files or PDFs of drawings or a step file, whatever kind of technical content ought to be available. Why not just have that here all the same? Okay. Maybe it's now a separate thing according to your business to then send that off to engineering. Okay. Engineering has its own place to go. All the engineers have access, let's say, only to the engineering state of affairs, right? And their dashboard is very limited. They can only see what's on their plate. They come in, they can see the order, and they can do whatever their workload is from there. It's just rendered and made available to them through the same system. Okay, and we keep pushing it through. We're going to send to manufacturing. Again, maybe the factory manager has his own view, or he can come in, see the same job in the same way, do whatever kind of activities required by the factory, and when that's done, they say, okay, send it off to shipping. At which point the shipping manager says, great, more orders to send out. I know where I need to go. Let me see all the orders. Oh, bit of a backlog here, shipping manager, but let's see what's going on with that particular order. By now, we've accumulated a lot of documents. It might be pretty handy. The shipping manager might not know what that window looks like. Well, they do if there were like CAD documents or CAD files or just imagery of that product. They can see technical content if that's appropriate. They can see visual content. They can see the shipping code. They can just print off the automatically generated shipping label. Who knows what, right? And this is where DriveWorks really starts to shine. It's not the focus today, but it's all about automations, integrations, and starting to have a common holistic system reach out and touch more and more parts of your business as it evolves. Okay, so hopefully that was a bit clear depiction of what CPQ can mean in the context of DriveWorks. If you're a manufacturer of configurable product, it might all stem from the fact that just to get started, just to take advantage of such a system, you need a way to configure product, period, right? It doesn't necessarily have to have 3D. It doesn't need a whole lot of whiz bang. Maybe it's just a basic form with 100 questions in it. The reality of the form, the UI can look very different across businesses, right? But it needs to be somewhere, right? It needs to be somewhere that's reliable, that's powered by the years of experience that you have, and you can translate into rules and logic and then connect all that to every other part of your business along the way.
Awesome. Thanks again, Joel. Thanks everybody for attending, and hopefully talking to everyone soon.